Thank you for joining us for our latest edition of Critical Conversations. This time around, we are focusing on our disability community as we acknowledge International Persons with Disability Day. I am Vicki Thomas, the Communications Director for the City of Detroit, and these critical conversations really bring people together to have dialogue about issues that impact our community in a way that I hope will foster greater understanding. Today we have a great panel of folks here at Marygrove's campus in Detroit. Our first panelist is Jamie Jr., and Jamie is Community Coordinator for Detroit's Office of Disability Affairs. Next, we have Kevin Fisher, who is Executive Director of NAMI Michigan, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And then we have Annie Urosky. Annie is Director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights Division. Again, we're observing International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So let's go around the horn, first of all, and have you talk about what this day means to you, and then also tell us about what you do in your respective roles. And we'll start with you, Jamie.
This day means representation to me. For so long, individuals with disabilities have been invisible. We kind of blend into the background. So this says that we are people who contribute equally to the fabric of the United States, and we should be celebrated for our accomplishments. And in my role as a community coordinator for the Office of Disability Affairs, I do that every day. I provide awareness, education, and engagement for individuals who are members of the disability community, both with visible disabilities or invisible disabilities. And we also seek to engage those that are impacted by disability.
And the office is not that old. I was a reporter for WWJ and was actually there at City Council when they approved the office, and there was so much excitement. So talk about what this office has really meant for residents of Detroit with disabilities.
So I'm gonna go back. Over 10 years ago, advocates within the city of Detroit, from ARC Detroit, Warriors on Wheels, which is a disability organization founded by Lisa Franklin, who is a woman with a disability herself, and many other advocates, some that are not with us anymore. They advocated and pushed for years to make sure that there was an office that could help individuals with disabilities navigate the complicated local government and to speak to their needs, also raising awareness within city departments and amongst officials, and giving a voice to people in the community to be included.
And you all just won an award. I just have to highlight that from ARC. Talk about that award real quick.
Yes. So we recently won Policymaker of the Year award from ARC Detroit. That award was to celebrate a policy that was created by our director, Christopher Samp, and CREO's director, Kimberly Rustam, that prioritized individuals with disabilities in the vaccination process and also provided rides for them to get their vaccination. And that's a huge deal because, as most folks know, people with disabilities were one of the highest impacted groups of people through the COVID-19 pandemic, and Detroit was first in the country to do this. So that was really a huge win for Detroit and for the Office of Disability Affairs.
I'm really proud of that office. I really am, and all the work that you all do. I'm sure you can tell. So let me be fair and move around a little bit. So Kevin, what does International Day of Persons with Disabilities mean to you? And then talk about your role with NAMI.
Well, it's significant because it allows us the opportunity to be inclusive, quite frankly. Mental illness is often been referred to as the invisible disability. You don't often see us in a wheelchair or on crutches or something like that. So people assume because you look normal, and I'll have to put that in quotes, that you're not living with any disability, but mental illness impacts your ability to function on a daily basis. And so this is an opportunity for us to be included in that conversation and eliminate the stigma associated with mental illness.
Annie.
Hello, this is Annie signing. First of all, I want to say thank you. It's such an honor to be here today. International Day of Persons with Disabilities. As a person with a disability, it is an opportunity to educate, advocate, and also do outreach internationally on the national and state level as well. We have to take advantage of all of those opportunities. So the more awareness that we can do, it will provide people with an understanding what it means to be inclusive and welcoming, and include persons with disabilities so that they're ingrained in that conversation and not as an afterthought. My role as the director of the Division on Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing, we serve approximately 7.4% of Michiganders who identify as deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing. So that's close to about 800,000 people.
Wow.
We're focusing primarily on two things: empowering individuals to access education and employment and all of those things. Also, we do a lot of training and also increasing awareness for our community.
Let's talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act. How did it come to be, and who does it protect? And let's start with Annie.
When people ask me how did it start, people make the assumption that the bill was just signed and Congress passed it and everything was great. But we have to go back to before that happened. There was countless advocates and stakeholders who raised awareness in regards to barriers that individuals were experiencing. And really, it happened on a local level first. We went to city council meetings, we went to different commissions to educate policymakers in regards to the barriers that individuals with disabilities were experiencing. And we would not be here today without them. We would not have the protections that we have without that advocacy that happened. We need to take the time to honor those individuals. So the intent of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was to protect and prevent discrimination under specific classes, not just for individuals with disabilities to have the same level of access as able-bodied individuals, but in different areas of their everyday life. For example, employment, education, telecommunication, access to state government services, the whole gamut of services. For me, as a person with a disability, the kind of access that I have, I would not have it without that legislation. So I'm very grateful for that.
And Kevin, in your opinion, tell us what the ADA means to you.
So the Americans with Disabilities Act is really important because it allows for equal access and the prevention of discrimination for persons who live with disabilities, both visible and invisible. And again, for people who are affected by behavioral health care disorders, whether it be mental illness, substance use disorder, intellectual and developmental disabilities, those disabilities are not usually considered or perceived as disabilities because, again, they are, and I don't mean to sound redundant, invisible. So it allows for people the opportunity to have equal access and, to fair employment and all of the other benefits that we all enjoy. And I'm aware of many situations where people who live with behavioral health care disorders have been denied that access. And so while we are grateful for the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's still a lot of education and work to go, and that's what makes this day so important.
Jamie?
Americans with Disabilities Act was absolutely a very important act. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be where I am today in the position that I have today without such an act. But as Kevin said, we have so much farther to go. We need to make sure that not only is the ADA honored, but it's enforced properly. And that all people understand that this law is in existence, what it does, how it affects everybody, not just myself who is a person in a wheelchair or a person with mental illness, but how it affects the person who has a chronic condition such as heart disease or diabetes or something like that, because those conditions are also covered.
Talk about non-compliance. I had an instance where I was with an executive who is wheelchair bound, and he was attending an event that we were hosting to honor him, and when he got to the venue, the curb wasn't cut out. So I had all these guys that were willing to lift up the wheelchair with him in it, but the look on his face, I mean, it was sheer, I remember it to this day because it was sheer terror. He was, and I knew the guys had him. I'm like, they're not gonna let you fall, and I was trying to reassure him. But I thought then that just should not happen. Are we still seeing instances where you have to continue to fight and people just are not complying with the law?
If I may, Vicki, we usually don't say wheelchair bound because most people are not bound to their wheelchair. We just say wheelchair user because we use a wheelchair like most people use shoes to get around.
Okay, that's good to know. So wheelchair users instead of wheelchair bound. Thank you for that.
Well, yes, non-compliance is still a problem, and most of the time, to be quite honest, it's because people don't understand that they are supposed to provide certain accommodations. They think that it's a special privilege or that it's them going over and above when it's not.
And Kevin, let's talk about mental illness as a disability. Why is mental illness considered a disability, and why is that such a little known fact?
So, mental illness is a disability because the illness impairs a person's ability to function or to carry out their normal daily duties. So for example, if I live with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or whatever my diagnosis may be, that diagnosis interferes with my ability to complete daily tasks in an otherwise normal fashion. So that's why it's a disability. Unfortunately, there is a stigma associated with mental illness, and it's really that simple, where not only in our society, but literally across the world, mental illness is treated as if you're a person who's less than, that you brought it on yourself, that you chose this, not understanding that mental illness is actually a medical diagnosis. It is a chemical imbalance in the brain. And it's a medical diagnosis like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. But unfortunately, the stigma does not allow us to accept it as such. And so that shame, that blame, that stigmatization, unfortunately, is the leading barrier that prevents people from seeking help. And so when we talk about equal access or getting care or treatment, while the conversation about lack of resources like psychiatric beds and behavioral health professionals and funding, while all of that is true and extremely important, if we don't overcome the stigma associated with mental illness, people won't take that first step to seek the help that they need. So we need to make the discussion about mental illness and mental health care normalized. We need to make sure that is a normal part of our conversation and understand that you don't have physical health without your mental health. You can't separate your brain from the rest of your body.
And I want to talk about how to overcome that stigma, and also how do we make it more common knowledge that mental illness is a disability. I know I would venture to guess that many families like my own has at least one member or maybe even two or three that suffer from a mental illness, whether it's immediate family or extended family. I had a sister who had a mental illness, and for families even, it's difficult to understand. We didn't really sit around and talk about it, didn't quite understand it, didn't even really know how to assist her. a lot of times and how to deal with her a lot of times. So how do we bring that into the forefront?
So this will sound very easy, but the best way to overcome or eliminate stigma is to talk about it. It's to normalize the conversation. The thing that we have to understand is in the United States, pre-pandemic, we said 1 in 5. So we said 20% of the American population would experience a mental health crisis in a given year. Since the pandemic, we're back to 1 in 4. So we're talking about 70 to 80 million Americans being affected by mental illness every year. That's more people than who'll be diagnosed with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all of those things combined. But because of the stigma, we're afraid to talk about it. And that's where it has to start. We have to start having that conversation. And with that many people, everybody knows somebody who's affected by mental illness. Everybody does. So we just need to stop looking at it as such a heavy conversation, a heavy topic, something we're afraid to talk about, and simply engage in the conversation. And one of the benefits from the pandemic is that we're starting to see more people do that. We've seen more athletes, we've seen more professionals, we've seen more actors and performers come out and say, this is really affecting me. We need to continue that conversation.
You think that's really had an impact on the stigma?
Oh, absolutely, because so many more people have been impacted during the pandemic. This social isolation, we've seen, unfortunately, an uptick in suicidal ideation. Think about it. Things that we take for granted, our children are now at home instead of being able to go to school and go to a basketball game and interact with their friends. That's causing depression, anxiety. That's causing an increase in suicidal ideation. Many professionals, the uncertainty of what the pandemic is doing to the economy. Am I gonna have a stable job to go back to? Am I gonna be able to care for my family? All of that is bringing on new cases of, again, depression, anxiety, but it's also exacerbating existing conditions, people who are already living with mental health diagnosis. So it's been a double-edged sword. It's affected more people, but it's at least got us talking more about it. And now we're seeing at both the state and federal level that they're starting to allocate more resources for it. So double-edged sword.
I do want to mention something here. The ADA amendment, that was the act that was amended in 2008, that expanded what disabilities are included, and it included the mental health. And so that amendment broadens the definition of what a disability is. So that's just a really important point we should make here.
And we're going to stay with Annie now. Let's move on to American Sign Language interpreters. And we have one here with us today. And we know that ASL interpreters are specially trained professionals who really help the deaf and those who are hard of hearing have equitable access to information and interactions with others. But what is something that many people don't know about their job?
That is a great question. To become an interpreter, you must have specialized skills and training. It's not like you can just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to become an interpreter today. So we have interpreter training programs here in the state of Michigan. We have certification and a testing process or to give them a license or become a certified interpreter. Also in the state of Michigan, we have interpreter rules or regulated rules that govern when interpreters or how they should work in specialized settings based on the level of risk. Because interpreters are there to facilitate communication, they are a tool between the deafblind or hard of hearing consumer who's using sign language and the hearing service provider or whoever is there so that the two parties can have a conversation. It's very critical that we protect the health and safety and the welfare of both parties, of the entire interaction, to make sure the interpreters are appropriately qualified for that situation. And a lot of people don't realize that it requires a lot of work, professional development, training. All of that is included in becoming an interpreter.
And what about some examples, Annie, of interpreters being able to provide equal accessibility to the deaf community that people may not think about or be aware of?
I have a great example here. We have, in the deaf community, we're a very small but diverse community, and we are often overlooked, or people don't think about the deafblind community. And so the deafblind community, there are some members that use interpreters. However, they also rely on tactile interpreting. And so in Michigan, we have interpreters who have an endorsement to work specifically with deafblind consumers. That tactile interpreter means that they are in closer proximity and they are hands-on, where the deaf consumer's hand is on top of the interpreter. And that's what tactile represents, that visual signing. And many people are not aware of that. And so for deaf-blind consumers to be, when they make an accommodation request for that, they ask them to please get an interpreter with that specific endorsement.
Let's move on to invisible disabilities. All of us watched the TikTok video that went viral by Jessica Tatiana Long, who actually has over a million followers on TikTok. But she is someone that's a double amputee who used prosthetics, to walk. So she got some grief from a woman as she was parked in a handicap spot. So it was shocking to watch that. Let's start with Jamie. When you watched that, what were you thinking?
First of all, I was saddened. As a member of the disability community myself, and I have several friends with both visible and invisible disabilities, I was really shocked and almost scared that we would inflict upon somebody else what is inflicted upon us on a regular basis. Because you don't know a person's story until you talk to them, or as we say in the mental health community sometimes, walk a mile in their shoes.
Annie, what did you think?
As a person with a disability, I'm deaf, I can totally relate. I've seen people tell me, "Oh, no way, you're deaf. You can hear me," because I can lip read well and I can speak well one-on-one. I choose what works for me best when I'm interacting with individuals. But people make all of these assumptions, and so I can totally relate to that. I think it's also interesting that on social media, that specific video, that's a good opportunity to really engage in conversations like this, where we can talk about why that's an issue and how that makes us feel, and how we can really prevent, videos like that from going viral. But also we need to find opportunities, again, to increase that awareness. But I can totally relate to that.
Annie, going back to what you mentioned earlier and your example, we had another one of a deaf woman who was denied service at Dunkin' Donuts. Now this one almost had me in tears because she was in tears. She loves Dunkin' Donuts and was denied service, and it really hit home. It was something I had not even thought about, but with the pandemic, people are wearing masks. You can't read lips, and that was the issue. And it was just overlooked, and this woman was denied service. I mean, what were you thinking when you watched that one?
That unfortunately, even before the pandemic, that was a typical situation that a deaf person would experience. Because again, you have to go back to the fact that people don't know how to interact with a deaf individual. And so again, we need more education, more awareness. And so with COVID, and the use of masks, it has been a huge communication barrier for us, because a deaf person who uses sign language really relies on, and also hard of hearing individuals who utilize lip reading. But it's facial expressions, body movement, all of that is a part of the language, and we need that to catch those visual cues that's happening in the conversation. And so when a person is interacting with another person, they're not showing that level of respect by being willing to be open-minded and to find alternative ways to communicate. You know, there are different options that were available to resolve that situation. They could have simply wrote back and forth. They could have used text to go back and forth. They could have stood further apart to pull down the mask and communicate. They could have pointed to a board or something. So it is critical here, the critical point here is that people should have the same level of respect. And so when you're trying to interact with us, if you have a mask on, please understand that there are other ways to communicate. Just be patient with us in the process. Also, I think, you know, we're still living in the pandemic, but going forward, we need to really embrace that level of respect and be willing to interact and engage and understand. Just because I'm deaf, just because I communicate in a different way does not mean that we can't have a conversation.
One thing that I want to say about these two incidences is these are incidences of ableism. We tend to think of ableism as simply just prejudice against a person with a disability. But the fact that people think that disability only presents one way, that's also a facet of ableism, because you're telling me I don't fit into your idea of what disability is.
And that's actually our next topic, and I was going to start with you, Jamie. Ableism, talk a little bit about what it is, how we recognize it.
Okay. So again, as I said, the basic definition is prejudice against someone who is disabled in favor of someone who is able-bodied. And I want to go back a little bit and talk about the term disability. And in reality, disability just really refers to the way a person with a health condition interacts with the world around them. It doesn't define the actual person. Like when you go get diagnosed by a physician, they don't diagnose you, oh, you have disability. They tell you that you have cerebral palsy, you have deafness, you have depression, anxiety, and then you go out into the world and have to deal with an inaccessible built environment, negative attitudes. Those are the real impacts. That's the real disability, how people interact with us. And ableism is like any other ism. It's so very limiting, and it does so much damage to us as a people.
I also wanted to take a step, I mean, that was a great explanation that you gave, Jamie, but I wanted to step back because I think it's critical that we look at it through a different lens. You know, I'm looking at it from the disability lens because that's the environment that I'm in, professional work environment, that's the life that I live. And so we live in a world, you know, in a society that's designed to benefit able-bodied individuals. So for people like me and persons with disabilities, we have to accommodate and we have to adapt based on every individual that we encounter in society. You know, we have to wake up every day, say, okay, I have to go to a meeting today, so I have to make sure that they have gotten an interpreter. Is there access? Is the person there going to understand why I need an interpreter? Has the interpreter been prepped with the different topics of today's meeting? So every day I have to think about all of these pieces, and able-bodied individuals, all of that's already taken care of for them because it's not part of their everyday purview. They just wake up every day and they can say, okay, what's my day going to be like today? And so when we talk about that ableism term, it's important to also think about how we frame things.
So what are some ways that people can work together really to prevent ableism and also support the disability community?
The first step is empathy, I think. We need to see things from the other person's perspective. The next thing is we need to pay careful attention to our language, to how we interact with people. When I was growing up, I was taught, so a man thinketh. The words that come out of a person's mouth indicate what's in their heart. So if I'm not choosing my words carefully, if I'm using terms like, oh, that's so lame, man, you just retarded. Those are words that have really hurtful consequences to when you use them just in casual, everyday language. We have to step back, like Annie said, and really think about it. I would also say the way that individuals can support the disability community and helping to dismantle ableism is lean into your own vulnerability. Oftentimes, ableism and things like that are rooted in fear because of the idea that it could be me any second. Most of my friends in the disabled community, we call able-bodied folks TABs. T-A-B, temporarily able-bodied people. You know, people, it's said in countless of studies that a person is a second away from a disability. So if we approach it from that way, if we simply adhere to that old antiquated golden rule that says treat people how you want to be treated, then that'll go a long way.
I like what I've heard from both Annie and Jamie, but Annie said something that really resonated with me. It's about patience, it's about compassion, it's about inclusion, and it's about action. If we want to eliminate stigmas, if we want to eliminate ableism, then not only do we begin by having the conversation, but actually taking action and recognizing those voices at the table. And just being patient and compassionate with people as a human being and understanding, again, you don't know everybody's journey, you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know how they got there. So we have to slow down and not jump to those conclusions and judge people.
Thank you for watching Critical Conversations, and I want to thank our dynamic panelists, Jamie, Annie, and Kevin. Thank you all so much for your insight and to this very critical conversation that we had today. I think we made a lot of headway. I'd also like to thank the folks here at Marygrove College for providing our space, and our ASL interpreter, Toy. Thank you also for being here to assist.